Hello and welcome back to the Jeff Daugherty Show, Christian Whistleblower, New Cosmic Knowledge YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Daugherty, and unless you are an uber nerd or very, very well read, you have probably never heard of one Richard Shaver. But today I want to talk to you about the amazing Shaver mystery. And this is an amazing story. And he was an amazing person, and the implications of what he thought, taught, believed, and wrote may prove to be amazing as well. So the amazing Shaver mystery from your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower. So Richard Sharp Shaver, born 1907, died 1975. He was an American writer and artist. He gained brief notoriety in World War II, author of controversial stories that were printed in science fiction magazines, primarily Amazing Stories, in which he claimed that he had personal experience with a sinister ancient civilization that harbored fantastic technology in caverns under the earth. And even though these were presented in the guise of fiction, Shaver always insisted they were true. And this is the first episode in which Shaver's story appeared, and it was rewritten to be called I Remember Lemuria by Richard S. Shaver. And of course they had scantily clad sexy women and monsters, but it's amazing too that Amazing Stories would have had him rubbing shoulders with one L. Ron Hubbard, and you'll see that. And Shaver might have been the only guy that was in the same league with Hubbard as being prolific as far as writing of words. So let's take a look at this guy and see what he was all about. Collectively, his work is called the Shaver Mystery. And he even, during the last part of his life, started devoting himself to what he called rock books. They were stones that he believed had been created by this advanced ancient race and embedded with legible pictures and text. He's also gained a reputation as an artist, and his paintings and photos have been exhibited in L.A., New York, and elsewhere. So let's take a look at Richard Shaver, and let's especially take a look at the Shaver mystery and how it may indeed relate to us today and in our spiritual growth and understanding. Shaver said he was working in a factory in 1932 when he started to hear men's thoughts, and he started to hear torture and interrogation coming from beneath the ground. He was receiving telepathic records of torture sessions, so he quit his job, lived on the streets for a while, and then finally one day, and by the way, he did spend some time in a psychiatric institution in 1934, didn't get a clear diagnosis, so you can't say that he was a crazy guy. And in 1943, he wrote a letter to this magazine, Amazing Stories, and he claimed to have discovered an ancient language named Mantong, a proto-human language, which means, remember, we never go past a word we don't know, which means before before humans, before Homo sapiens, if you will. But at any rate, each sound had a different meaning, and by applying the formula to any word in any language, you could decipher a hidden phrase or a hidden meaning, kind of like a Bible code or something, huh? And the editor said, hey, this guy's on to something. So he wrote back to Shaver, asked him how did he come across this language. He gets a 10,000 word response talking about how there were these prehistoric aliens that actually left some of their people on Earth. I want to turn to another book called The War in Heaven, and this is very, very good, and I hope I still have it up. And I'm going to read from The War in Heaven. This is good stuff. You're going to be seeing more of this from me, The War in Heaven. But at any rate, this writer talks about, or gives us a synopsis of Shaver's writings. Thousands of years ago, extraterrestrial space travelers visited Earth and established huge underground colonies here. Now you can see the tie-ins, and you can see how maybe Hubbard was famous for gleaning bits of information from everywhere. He was very well traveled, went all over the world, talked to all sorts of interesting people. That's why people say, oh, I hate Scientology. Well, there's really nothing original in Scientology. It was Ron Hubbard picking from here and there and gleaning and cobbling together a lot of information that he repackaged and called Scientology. And as we read through the Shaver mystery, you're going to probably see where Ron might have got some of his ideas from. But anyway, these space travelers visited Earth and established underground colonies. They couldn't live on the surface because of solar radiation, and they lived for centuries if they could stay underground. Now, eventually, the civilization planted colonies had, they become moribund. The contact with the parent world was less and less frequent, and you're starting to kind of see correlations between the Anunnaki stories as well. So they were cut off from outside supplies. Some of the colonists were forced to live permanently on the surface to grow food and obtain the raw materials necessary to sustain their life in these underground cities. But over a long period of time, the radiation, even though they were underground, finally did start getting to these people, and it made them basically go crazy. It made them become barbarians. It made them become dangerous, and it made them become dangerous to humans. And during this whole period, Shaver wrote that they lived in what we call caves, and they had constant shortages of supplies. So they began to pose as gods to coerce surface people into giving them food and other necessities. Now, they did also discover that they possessed machines that were left by their forefathers that would give them certain power over surface dwellers. They called them rays. Some could kill, some could wound people, but others could be used to heal or slow injury and even slow the aging process. So the rays could also be used for telepathic communication and mind control. So now you're starting to see some of the, base in the moon, mind control, rays, David Icke type of a stuff. So they were able to have some effect on the surface and get some people down there, and they started to eating people. And here's your skinwalkers and your stories from the Native Americans, the American Indians, of things coming out of the earth, even your underground reptilians. We're getting into that whole thing. And actually, Shaver called them Deros, and that they had become insane tyrants, and their bodies are deformed, and they're trying to use those life-prolonging rays to achieve immortality, but between the rays and the radiation, they have not been able to maintain their sanity, and they now are at the place where they've got to eat human flesh like ghouls or chupacabras and drink blood like vampires. However, there are some cave people that are still normal. They call themselves the Teros, and they actually use the rays to help people on the surface, and help them, and they combat the evil work being done by the Deros. They're not strong enough to conquer and destroy those Deros, but the only reason they survive at all is because they sometimes receive help from other extraterrestrials that arrive in the spaceship. So interesting stuff. They don't have the ability to defeat them, but they are trying to help us out. So now you get into the kind of the lore of good reptilians, bad reptilians. But these folks were unable to help us overcome these Deros, but they are able to help us at least, stay on the good side of these guys. So all of this story was published in Amazing, Other Worlds, Fantastic, all of these different sci-fi magazines. Before they had YouTube, this is what y'all did right here. Read these magazines. Hollow Earth, of course, works into this. He even had his stuff appear in Life magazine. He, doubled and tripled the circulation of any magazine that his stories appeared in. Many people dismissed the Shaver mystery as the Shaver hoax, but very much an interesting phenomenon. Shaver mystery clubs sprung up all over the country, even the world. And as those pulp magazines lost the popularity, Palmer continued promoting the Shaver mystery to a diminishing audience through another publication called The Hidden World. And finally, Shaver and his wife produced a Shaver mystery magazine. So it definitely had some life. It definitely had some interest in it. But the thing that is kind of interesting is that it does have some interest, and there are people out here that believe that Shaver was onto something, and they believe that part of what he was talking about, Shaver always insisted it was true. So many people are insisting, I should say some people are insisting that it was true, and that Shaver uncovered not only some spiffy, great science fiction stories, but he looked behind the curtain and saw what was going on in our spiritual world. So whether he did or not, well, my friends, that's another story, isn't it? Now, some of the questions brought up by Shaver's work, by the Shaver Mysteries, have caused the writer of this book, The War in Heaven, to ask some questions that I consider to be rather good questions as well. Books on spiritualism and other forms of traditional Western occultism usually portray the astral plane as a rather benign and orderly place presided over by benevolent deities or advanced human spirits. In fact, many of you listening to me are just dying to go gallivanting around in the astral realm. You think it's a cool place, a spiffy place, a fun place. But this writer said, and I have discovered this myself, and have shared it and haven't had many people agree with me, that the astral plane can be an environment almost as harsh as Shaver's caves. And the question that this writer asked, that I echo, if the astral plane is really governed by benign gods or other highly evolved spiritual beings, they don't seem to be doing a great job of helping the dead find stability or happiness there. If the astral plane is under the control of benign forces, why does so much of the observed evidence portray life there as extremely harsh and scary? I mean, why do I get in contact with spirits that are not happy to be there, that are trapped there, and that are looking for a way out? Is it possible that Shaver might have found a key to something, or that his work is at least working, or at least worth looking into? That's the question that's bouncing around my mind right now. And I have to tell you, folks, that like this writer, War in the Heavens, I find myself asking and echoing that my personal communications with spirits tell me that the vast majority of the human race is not composed with high-level occultists capable of avoiding evil spirits on the lower astral and going onto a higher plane of existence when they die. In fact, I'm not very confident of that at all. I think that most people are so indoctrinated and so deluded that when they die, and you've heard me talk about this before, that when they die, it's almost guaranteed that they're going to join the lost souls calling out for help. And as I've shared with you, my sympathies are with these people, and I'm trying my best to learn how to effectively help them. I appreciate some of you have sponsored my work, and I'm able to get a hold of some equipment that we are going to start to put into use starting tomorrow. And we're going to try to take our research and our ghost helping, for lack of a better term, I call it ghost helper, trying to help these people, these lost souls calling out for help. Now here's my opinion, and I share it with this fellow here, the writer of War in Heaven, and I can't remember his name right now, and I don't really want to go up to the top and try to find this again. So next time we talk about this, which will be soon, I'll make sure that I have his name. Like him, my opinion is that both traditional and New Age occultists, all of us in the truth movement, are deluding ourselves with false optimism because we're afraid to recognize and fight evil. I, like this guy, have a terrible feeling that something bad is going on in the spiritual realm. Dr. Andy Toltec and I used to talk about this. And Dr. Toltec, if you hear this and you're out there, get back in touch with me. I know he's had some personal issues going on. So he has, not issues, he had some things he had to do. I mean, he is a doctor. And then this fellow, this writer, said that he's found out that there's a literal war in heaven, a struggle between two political factions of disembodied spirits, and that Shaver's Caves, the space people, and even the ray machines do exist, but they exist on the spiritual plane, not on the physical plane. It's not too far distant from the Carlos Castaneda books, where he was dealing with Don Juan and being taught. A lot of people say, oh, he faked those. I don't think he faked them. I just think that he was communicating with Don Juan on the astral level, and Castaneda may not even have known that he was communicating with Don Juan on an astral level. But there has been, since the 60s, an ever-increasing influence by these spirits on many of the UFO folks, many of the conspiracy theory folks, and a lot of us are starting to think along the ways of the Shaver mysteries. So we're going to start talking about this. We're going to start examining this. And we're going to see if there's not something to learn, and if there's not, if we're not being called to a higher standard and a new methodology. If a new alarm is not being sounded that requires us to step up our game and to do more than just make YouTube videos and pat each other on the back. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I am not averse to you patting me on the back whatsoever. I hope that you'll like, I hope that you'll share, and I hope that you consider sponsoring our work. You can go to my website, jeffreydaugherty.com. It's linked in the box below. One-click sponsorship through PayPal or also through Patreon. My books are there as well. Everything you give, boom, right back into the work to help us do more of this good stuff. Again, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. Tonight we've taken a look at the amazing Shaver mystery, and I have to put part 1 right there because we'll definitely be seeing more of this, and we'll definitely be talking more about this in the days and weeks to come. Unwind your mind, unindoctrinate yourself, and be excellent to each other.